I never imagined a day would come when my son would turn the tables on the CEO who ridiculed him. I can still hear the harsh laughter echoing in my ears, the disbelief that clenched my throat tighter than a noose. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The cold office building loomed over us, a monster made of glass and steel, so polished yet so uninviting. My son Jamie stood in the shadow of those towering walls, his small frame trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. He was only 16, but today he bore the weight of the world on his shoulders. They had called him a loser, mocked him until tears streamed down his cheeks. I felt the fire of rage burn inside me. Yet it was Jamie who turned that pain into a quiet resolve. Growing up, Jamie was my light, brimming with kindness, humor, and creativity. He loved to draw and dream. But as time passed, those dreams began to feel like shards of glass, cutting into his confidence. The kids at school turned cruel, and I could see it in the way he withdrew, the way he clutched his sketchbook like a lifeline. A mother's heart aches deeper than any blade could cut. The CEO, Mr. Hawthorne, often held court in his sleek corner office, ruling his empire with a cold, ruthless smile. How could someone so powerful be so devoid of empathy? It wasn't just Jamie. I had seen him tear down others with a laugh that made the walls shudder. But today was different. Today Jamie had come to confront him. I stood frozen outside the office doors, my pulse racing. I could taste the desperation in the air, thick and suffocating. Jamie had made a plan, and it scared me to death. Would he confront Hawthorne, or would he crumble like a dry leaf? Moments stretched into eternity as I waited. I imagined my son inside that room, his heart pounding like a war drum. It took all my strength not to burst in there, to shield him from whatever might unfold. But this was Jamie's fight. My chest tightened with every second, my hands trembled with worry. Then I heard it. A crash, a shout, then silence. The world around me blurred, and I shot forward, pushing the door open. I gasped. There he stood, defiant, unwavering. Jamie had turned the tables. His voice was steady, his eyes fierce. "You don't get to decide my worth," he declared. The CEO's expression shifted, confusion mingling with disbelief. Jamie held something in an envelope? A flash drive? I couldn't tell from where I stood. And then Mr. Hawthorne leaned back, smugness creeping back into his features. "You think you can intimidate me?" he sneered. That was when my heart sank. I could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity. What was in that envelope? What had Jamie uncovered? A wave of uncertainty washed over me, my instincts screaming that this was not just about him and Hawthorne anymore. This was bigger. A collective gasp reverberated from the gathered employees. I noticed their wide-eyed stares, the tension in their whispers. Jamie was suddenly the epicenter of their attention. Head grabbed the spotlight, but at what cost? I took a shaky step closer, heart pounding again. What would happen next? Would he win, or were we about to witness another defeat, another moment of ridicule? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence in the room was suffocating. A thick blanket draped over Jamie's confrontation. I could hardly breathe as I watched the exchange unfold. Mr. Hawthorne's composed facade began to crack, revealing a hint of vulnerability beneath his polished arrogance. Jamie, however, stood unwavering, a flicker of determination lighting up his eyes. "I have documents," Jamie said, his voice steady as he clutched the envelope. "Documents that prove your unethical practices." Every syllable echoed through the room, and I could see the shifting expressions among the employees. There was a blend of awe and disbelief, as if someone had switched on a light in a darkened hallway. For the first time, they were witnessing Jamie's courage in action. Hawthorne's smugness morphed into annoyance, and he leaned forward, brow furrowed. "You think you can threaten me with a piece of paper? You're just a kid playing with things you don't understand." His voice dripped with condescension. But Jamie was undeterred. "You may think you're invincible, but no one is above the law. I know what you've done to the others, the layoffs, the manipulation of contracts. I'm not just a kid. I'm someone who will stand up for what's right. As I stood there, glued to the scene, a swell of pride crushed the weight of my anxiety. Jamie had grown so much more than I had realized, a warrior battling his own demons, determined to take on the titan that had loomed over our lives for far too long. I glanced around, noticing that a few of the employees were nodding slowly, confidence sparking within them, fueled by Jamie's bravery. But the confrontation took a turn when Hawthorne finally regained his composure. You're stepping into a world that can chew you up and spit you out, boy. You have no idea who you're dealing with. His tone was laced with menace, a warning that sent chills down my spine. That moment, the room closed in on me. What if Hawthorne retaliated fiercely? What if Jamie's bravery led to disastrous consequences? I couldn't allow my son to face that alone. The thought of him being crushed by this monster was unbearable. I took a hesitant step forward, ready to intervene to shield him from the fallout. But a voice from the back broke through my thoughts. You're wrong, Hawthorne. It was Sarah, one of the office assistants I knew had been affected by the CEO's ruthless decisions. We know what you've done and we won't stand for it anymore. Jamie's right. We're not afraid to speak out. In that moment, a ripple of courage spread through the room. Other employees began to stand, urging each other on, emboldened by Jamie's defiant stance. I felt a mix of hope and fear. Could this collective strength be enough to combat the storm ahead? But then, as the energy shifted, I saw Hawthorne's expression shift from anger to something darker: calculation. You're all too naive, he scoffed, his gaze narrowing. You think power will bend to your will? I can make all of you disappear with a snap of my fingers. Do you really want to play this game? I felt the dread coil in my stomach. It was a stark reminder that fighting against the establishment came with risks I had never wanted my son to face. But the sparkle in Jamie's eyes, the way he held that envelope close, told me he was prepared to fight. He believed something could emerge from this confrontation, something better than what we currently endured. I gazed around the room, seeing that there were still supporters rallying, other voices echoing Sarah's defiance. As courage swelled within them, a flicker of hope ignited in me. Yet, amidst the unity, a nagging concern settled in my chest, whispering dark predictions I was desperate to ignore. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the air, the click of footsteps approaching. A tall figure stepped into the room, eyes scanning the scene before settling on Jamie. It was Thomas, the company's legal advisor, known for his intimidating presence and razor-sharp intellect. The room fell silent as he approached, surveying the intensity of the standoff. Then he turned to Jamie, his voice smooth yet laced with authority. You have no idea what you're getting into, kid. His words sent a ripple of tension through the air. I suggest you walk away before this goes any further. You're treading on dangerous ground. A knot tightened in my throat. Who was this man and what did he know? And why did his presence fill me with dread? Before I could process my thoughts further, Jamie's voice rang out again, firm and unyielding. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is anyone else here who's ready to fight for what's right. The moment hung between them like a thread barely holding on. What would it take to break it? Would Jamie's courage lead them into a fight they were not ready for? My heart raced as I realized we were teetering on the edge of a cliff, and I had no idea which way we would fall. The room felt electric, charged with a tension that was almost palpable. I could see the sweat forming at Jamie's temples, and the resolute glimmer in his eyes was both thrilling and terrifying. It was as if he had stepped into his purpose. Yet here I stood, the specter of fear wrapping around my heart. Dangerous ground? Jamie replied, his voice unwavering. I've already seen how treacherous things can get, Thomas. Hiding behind a nice suit doesn't make this any less true. His words hung in the air, bold and daring, but Thomas' expression didn't falter. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You think you're going to change the world with idealism? You need to wake up, kid. Idealism is a luxury few can afford. There's a reason good people turn a blind eye. I watched as the fire in Jamie's chest flickered momentarily caught off guard by the harshness of the truth. I knew that familiar wave of doubt could easily sweep over him if he let it in. Was this all just a naive hope, brought on by the desperation of our circumstances? Yet the room behind him was awakening, a storm brewing amidst the warmth of shared ideas and the taste of rebellion. I saw it in the clenched fists of the employees, the glances exchanged among them. They needed this. They needed Jamie's courage, even if it came at a steep price. I understand, Jamie said slowly, gathering himself again. But if nobody speaks up, this nightmare continues unchecked. I won't let fear dictate our actions. The room erupted with murmurs of agreement, a groundswell of solidarity rising like a tide. It was powerful, intoxicating, yet I felt a pit deep in my stomach. But then Sarah spoke again, her voice rising above the rest. We've lost too much already. If we don't stand, we risk losing everything. That I turned my gaze to Jamie once more. His resolve had returned, and the flame in his voice was kindling warmth in the hearts of those sparking with newfound courage. In that moment he wasn't just my boy. He was a beacon of hope. I wanted to reach out, to grab him and say, let's run, let's leave this place behind. But I knew I was merely a moth fluttering around a flame, and I couldn't snuff out the light he had ignited. But Thomas seemed unfazed by the groundswell. You're all making a crucial mistake, he warned. Hawthorne is not just a monster, he's connected. If you push him, he could crush you without thinking. This company could ruin you. There was a brief glimmer of uncertainty across Jamie's features, and I could feel the tremor of nerves begin to weave through him. Was it foolishness to attempt this? I couldn't ignore the truth in those words. The accusations Jamie flung at Hawthorne were far from empty. They were bullets that could ricochet back into our lives. But suddenly, in that moment of weakness, I heard another voice, quiet yet rich with empathy. What if we didn't fight alone? Lily, a fellow employee I hadn't even noticed before, emerged from the shadows. Her hands trembled slightly, but the sincerity in her eyes was like a bomb. I have a network of contacts, journalists who care about stories like ours, Lily. You don't know how dangerous that can be. Sarah interrupted, but the fire in Lily's eyes was enough to silence the room. I don't. But I also don't want us to sit here quietly any longer, waiting for the axe to drop. Her gaze drifted to all of us, her voice stronger. We've all suffered under his regime for too long. We share this burden. Together we can be a force. The possibilities cascaded around us like droplets of hope dancing in the air. But then I felt the chill of reality creeping in. Cooperation had power, yes, but it also exposed us to severe vulnerabilities. He has resources to bury every last one of us, Thomas interjected, noting the flicker of hope. You risk everything for a shred of solidarity. It's not just your jobs at stake here. It's your lives. His words were not mere threats. They were dire warnings, as if he was the harbinger of impending doom. Jamie fell silent, the gravity of our situation settling heavily on his shoulders. I could feel the thrum of anxiety scale the walls of my heart as I considered the danger lurking over every decision we were about to make. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Hawthorne shifting his weight, a sharp smile splaying on his face as he took in the rising tension. You think your presence here matters? You think a mutiny is the answer? He taunted. Believe me, my dear employees, the consequences will be catastrophic. Panic sliced through the room. I felt the weight of despair pushing against hope. How many plans had crumbled into dust before? How many sacrifice tales had emerged only to end with blood on the ground? I wanted to scream for Jamie to step back, to put the envelope down and retreat to safety before the trap closed. Yet, standing there amongst this group of resolute souls, I realized that maybe the path lined with fear and uncertainty was also a path towards something greater, something profoundly liberating. And as I stood, the words of the old adage echoed in my mind. Nothing worth having came without risk, and then, before I could collect my scattered thoughts, Hawthorne snapped his fingers. Let's give them a real push, shall we? The abrupt shift in energy sent a shockwave through the gathered crowd. There was an air of dread, an immediate atmosphere of impending doom that I couldn't ignore. Fear threaded through me, dark and sticky. I felt his malicious intent a heartbeat away. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a single, urgent message flashing across the screen. We need to talk. Now. Followed by a name that sent a chill cascading down my spine. A name connected to the very heart of Hawthorne's empire. As I looked at Jamie, my heart racing, the realization of the choices we faced struck me like a tidal wave. Would I be able to shield my son from the storm we had invited into our lives? I was left teetering on the edge of despair and hope, and I had no clear path in sight. The tension in the air crackled violently, sharper now, as I stared at the phone in disbelief. The name that blinked aggressively on the screen felt like a brand seared into my mind. Rachel. A ghost from the past, a connection I had tried to sever before it could do more damage. But like bad memories, it clung stubbornly, relentless in its resurgence. Dad? You okay? Jamie's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. His brow furrowed with concern, the battle within him raging on. Did he sense the enormity of what I held in my hand, or only the tremor in my voice as I struggled to find words? Yeah, it's just I stammered, unable to address the urgency of the situation while the potential implications gnawed at my insides. My point still stands, Thomas interrupted, his gaze darting between Jamie and me, his suspicion palpable. Pushing back against Hawthorne means facing his wrath directly. And trust me, he won't hesitate to destroy anyone who crosses him. Lily took a step forward, her earlier fire dimmed by unease. But isn't it worse to do nothing? To let him keep playing God with our lives? A murmur of agreement surged in the small crowd, but fear lingered beneath the surface like a coiled snake, ready to strike at the first sign of vulnerability. Just as the harmony flickered to life, darkness threatened to envelop it again. Lily's right, Jamie asserted, his voice rising above the murmurs. Standing up for each other. For what's right, that's how we take back our lives. We can't be afraid to challenge this. Yes, yes. The movement sparked again with renewed vigor, but the doubt in my heart grew heavier. Resistance has a price. I couldn't let Jamie or anyone else pay attention. My phone buzzed again, insistent. Each vibration felt like a hammer striking an anvil, threatening to draw attention. Jamie reached for it, and in that moment of hesitation, I fought against the instinct to hold it close to my chest. Give me a minute. It's not, but it was too late. He had snatched it from my fingers before I could catch my breath. The spotlight of confusion blazed onto my son as he read the message visible on the screen. His eyes widened, flickering with recognition, and what glimmered there nearly broke me as if he had seen an unspeakable truth buried in the past. You know her, Jamie whispered, urgency dripping from each word. Ish was part of a different life, I stammered, each syllable defeating me, revealing the cracks of my carefully constructed defenses. She can't help us. That part of my life is done. But Jamie wasn't having it. You have to tell me why she contacted you, because I buried that. My voice erupted, a fierce reminder that had all of us reeling. The room fell into a chilling silence as my admission took form like a gust of icy wind. Jamie recoiled momentarily, and I saw a flicker of hurt in his eyes. Why didn't you say anything? The tremor in his voice was raw, vulnerable. You could have trusted me. Just as I opened my mouth to reply, an unsettling chill slithered through the air, an unpredictable current of danger. Hawthorne stood just shy of the doorway, an unexpected spectator. Well, he mused, a predatory grin widening across his face as he adjusted the lapels of his immaculate suit. Seems like we have quite the family drama unfolding. You know what they say about skeletons in closets, don't you? The crowd shrank back against the walls, bravado crumbling with the realization of their leader's presence. Jamie tightened his fists, steel emerging where insecurity had reigned before. You think you're clever, don't you, Hawthorne? Jamie declared, his voice steadier than I had anticipated. Cleverness is a skill, dear boy, Hawthorne responded dismissively, yet the glimmer in his eyes suggested amusement mingled with menace. You'll learn soon enough that digging into the past can come with dire consequences. Just like speaking out or releasing secrets. What do you know about my mum? My voice trembled alongside Jamie's challenge, untamed panic curling in my stomach. Oh, let's just say Rachel has quite the track record with people who cross paths with. Her little secret, he said casually, the malice seeping through every word. Or should I say, her little protectors? With those words the air thickened, the very essence of camaraderie I felt moments ago fracturing under the weight of betrayal. I had unwittingly opened a can of chaos, and Jamie would soon face the repercussions. I shot him a loca mix of warning and urgency, but Jamie remained steadfast, rooted in defiance. Whatever you're planning, we won't let you intimidate us. You're not invincible. Oh, delusional youth. The world is ruled by fear and power. It's adorable that you think bravery will shield you. With that, Hawthorne turned on his heel, exiting the room with a nonchalance designed to weigh down their spirits. Hope spiraled into uncertainty, threads of trepidation woven tighter as awareness struck. The urgency of Rachel's message knotted my insides in fear, prickling heartbeat against my throat. What secrets lay hidden? How long would it take before the truth about my past erupted like the volcano I had tried to quell? And then, just as I thought we were being pulled under the rising waves of dread, Jamie's hand caught mine, squeezing it with unbroken trust. "Dad, we can face this together. Just tell me everything." As the final vestiges of Hawthorne's laughter echoed in the hall, I stood at the crossroads of my past and present, an emotional chasm gaping open beneath our feet. Would I let my son plunge into the waters of my history, or could I find a way to shield him from the storm brewing on the horizon? Desperation washed over me, heavy and oppressive. I could feel the threat tightening its grip around our lives. Only one thing was certain. If I chose to share my truth, there would be no turning back, and the storm could either drown us or set us free. The stillness that followed Hawthorne's departure felt tangible, heavy with unspoken words and the aftermath of revelations that had only just begun to unfold. Among the scattered breaths of the group gathered around us, I could feel Jamie's gaze lingering on my face, urging me to reveal the truth that was tearing us apart, while simultaneously binding us together. "Dad," he said, soft but unwavering, "please. I can't help you if you don't tell me what's really going on. Who is Rachel and why now? Why after all this time?" Every word hung in the air like a fragile thread, poised to snap. I blinked, the heat of his concern cutting deeper than I wanted to show. "It's complicated." I thought. I hesitated, the weight of guilt flooding my veins. The past pressed down on me, an unwelcome specter ready to resort to violence. "We deserve to know," Lily interjected, stepping forward, her petite frame radiating both strength and vulnerability. "Whatever it is, we're facing it together. We have to be a unit if we stand a chance against Hawthorne." Their support wrapped around me like an embrace. Yet I felt an impending sense of doom for what lay ahead. She was part of a life I thought I severed a time before all of this. The confession scraped against my throat like shards of glass, each syllable tasting like betrayal. Jamie listened, his expression a mix of worry and hope. "Before what?" He pressed gently, urging me to bridge the gap that threatened to widen with my silence. "Before I became your father. Before I committed to protecting you at all costs." The words tumbled out, unpolished and raw. Rachel was involved with Hawthorne. We were part of a different world, one filled with darkness. A connection I never wanted to revisit because it poured poison into the lives of those I love. The realization hit Jamie as if the weight of my past crashed down on him. "You mean Hawthorne knows something about her? About you? Is that why he wants to use her against you?" I nodded, my heart pounding with each confession, the shadows of old regrets creeping closer. "He may use Rachel as a pawn against me, against us. He knows how to exploit vulnerabilities. He enjoys it." Lily reached for Jamie's hand, an anchor as the chaos around us seemed to recede. "But he doesn't know everything. If we are careful, if we strategize, we can turn this to our advantage." The flickers of hope ignited in Jamie's eyes, blending with the dark clouds lurking in my chest, where fear mingled with determination. "Then we gather intel on Rachel or find her before Hawthorne does. We can handle this," he said, the reckoning of their shared journey lighting a strength in him I hadn't seen before. "Jamie, no. It's not that simple," I urged, knowing what monsters lay in wait. I had fought for years to keep these dangers at bay. I wouldn't allow them to come rushing back. But as I looked at him unwavering, something inside me began to change. A small flicker of hope stirred against the tides of my frantic heart, a glimmer of a plan forming in the depths of uncertainty. What if we reached out to Rachel? If we can't avoid the storm, we might need her help to withstand it. Before Jamie could respond, however, the door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped in, interrupting the fragile moment of contemplation that lingered in the air. "Did someone say my name?" Rachel's voice sent shivers down my spine, and I stood petrified, the veil of the past shredding in front of my very eyes. "Rachel," Jamie whispered, his grip tightening on my hand. She stood in the entryway, a silhouette against the light, her expression a mixture of defiance and apology. "I never thought I'd see you again," she said, and her gaze locked onto mine, as if trying to decipher a truth hidden behind the years. The crowd behind me fell into a hushed silence, the charged tension thickening the air, as I stared at the woman who had once played a pivotal role in my greatest regrets. "What do you want?" I managed to murmur, my voice barely breaking through the haze of shock. "I've come to warn you, to help, because this is about more than just you now," she said, her intensity shifting, revealing a vulnerability that I remembered one that mirrored my own. "Hawthorne's been watching you closely, and he's closer than you think." There was no time to process the weight of her words, a precarious balancing act hanging between mistrust and a desperate plea for help. What had I done by inviting this ghost back into my life? But before I could speak, she continued, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Your son, he's in danger." Hope splintered inside my chest, and with it came a new wave of fear. I sensed the precipice on which we all teetered, everything unraveling as secrets set us on a collision course with fate. Would I allow my past to dictate our future? Or would I finally shatter the chains binding me? "Rachel," I spoke, my voice faltering, "you need to explain yourself." "What danger?" But just as the heart of the matter began to unfold, a loud crash echoed beyond the walls, the unmistakable sound of shattered glass, an omen of chaos about to erupt. The finality of that sound sealed our fate, dredging a tightening cord of anxiety around us. And as I looked at Jamie, fear glinting in his eyes, I braced myself, knowing that the life we fought to protect might just hang in the balance. The shattered glass fell like rain, each fragment catching the soft light and refracting it into a dizzying array of colors. I turned instinctively toward the window, my heart racing as adrenaline courses through my veins. A figure darted past the broken pane, cloaked in darkness, a fleeting shadow amidst chaos. "Stay back," I shouted, placing myself protectively in front of Jamie and Lily. The instinct to shield them surged within me, fueled by a protective instinct that had only deepened since stepping into the role of father. My pulse quickened, echoing the panicked thoughts racing through my mind. Rachel's gaze flitted toward the intrusion, her bravado faltering briefly before hardening with resolve. "We need to move now," she urged, her voice steady, yet beneath it, I could feel the tremor of her own fears. "Who was that?" Jamie asked, his voice trembling with a mix of curiosity and dread. I could see the questions swirling in his eyes, questions I didn't have the answers to, and that terrified me more than the intruder lurking just outside. "Just a shadow," I replied. "But we can't take chances." My voice was firm, determined to instill courage where uncertainty loomed. "Lily, get Jamie to the back room. We need to get out of here." But as Lily turned to lead Jamie away, Rachel placed a hand on my arm, her touch igniting a firestorm of memories, both beautiful and devastating. "If Hawthorne's behind this, he won't let you just walk away. He knows you're vulnerable now," she confessed, the weight of her words pressing heavily on me. "I didn't ask for your help." The bitterness felt palpable on my tongue, confronting the remnants of our past with a fleeting sense of indignation. I could feel her intention mixed with desperation, reaching for a lifeline even as reminders of betrayal clawed at my chest. "I didn't expect an invitation," she shot back, her voice laced with hurt, but beneath it simmered a fierce determination. "But we're in this together whether you like it or not." The cracks in my armor opened wider, revealing a sliver of doubt as I wrestled with the idea of uniting my fractured present with the ghost of my past. "What do you know about Hawthorne?" I pressed, needing answers that could buoy our rapidly sinking ship. "Enough to know that he's not done with you. He sees you as a threat, especially now that you're a father. That makes you weak in his eyes, but it also gives you an edge if you play it right," she urged, urgency clinging to her words. The room around us pulsed with anticipation, and Jamie's worried eyes darted between me and Rachel. "What do we do?" he asked, fighting to keep the tremble from his voice, though I could see he was fighting a tide of fear. My heart sank deeper, seeing the beacon of hope dimming in my son's eyes, his youth marked by a weight that should not have been his to carry. Everything I had sworn to protect felt agonizingly close to slipping through my fingers. "Let's call the police," Lily suggested, her voice steadier than I felt, her maturity blossoming in the face of fear. "No. They'll only complicate things," I countered, but even as I spoke, a looming sense of panic gnawed at my resolve. "We need to act fast. Distraction might give us the opportunity to escape." The words hung in the air, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom weighing on my heart. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around my throat, suffocating the hope I had managed to grasp. Rachel's gaze softened as she assessed the tension radiating from me. "We can outmaneuver him. Let's split up. It's a gamble, but if Hawthorne has a team out there looking for you, we can draw them away." A part of me recoiled at the idea of dividing our already fragile unit, a literal battlefield where trust would be tested. But I was out of options and the threat outside was becoming far more tangible. "We need a plan," I said firmly, glancing at Jamie, who stood poised to protest. Yet the flicker of acceptance in his eyes made me realize he understood. "If we're going to do this, we need to trust each other, all of us." The unspoken vow hung between us, fragile yet imperative. Lily squeezed Jamie's hand, grounding him with a silent strength of her own. "Then what do we do?" she asked, rallying them both with her unyielding spirit. Something shifted within me, perhaps the realization that the fight had never just been mine alone. "Rachel, if we're going to play this game, we need to meet Hawthorne on his turf. If he thinks he's controlling the board, he won't see us coming." Her eyes hardened, the fighter within her long dormant sparking to life. "I know where he'll be. A charity gala for his company tomorrow night. It's a perfect cover." A pang of anxiety gripped me. What about Jamie? "He's not safe. Let me make my own choice," Jamie interrupted, his voice suddenly gaining strength. "I'm involved in this whether you like it or not. I want to help." I met his gaze, my resolve wavering as I recalled the burdens he had already carried. Rachel took a step forward, her voice low and urgent. "If you come, you'll need to stay hidden. We can't risk you being exposed." But the odds, all of our lives could change. In that flash of conviction, I saw the young man he was becoming, filled with the unyielding desire to protect those he loved. It was bittersweet, a reminder that the scars of my past might yet shape his future. Just then, another crash echoed through the building, this time Clausera, harbinger of chaos, inching ever nearer. My chest tightened with fear and the reality of our impending fate settled like a lead weight in my stomach. "Get ready," I urged, adrenaline surging through me again. As we all reached for the last glimmers of hope we could find, a flickering flame against an overwhelming darkness. And as we took our first steps towards an uncertain confrontation, I sensed the threads of fate unraveling around us, premonitions tightening their grip. Tomorrow would bring choices I never imagined, testing the fabric of our bonds as we faced an enemy who wielded the past like a weapon. But one undeniable truth echoed within me. There was a strength in us forged through shared battles, and I wasn't ready to let that flicker extinguish just yet. The next day dawned harsh and gray, the sun hiding beneath a blanket of thick clouds that mirrored the anxiety swirling in my chest. We had come together like a fragile fortress, but with the looming charity gala only hours away, it felt more like a house teetering on the edge of collapse. I never imagined that the path to confronting Hawthorne would lead us here, yet the plan we had devised slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. Though Rachel's determination flared like a flame, the uncertainty of what awaited us cast a long shadow over our preparations. Jamie sat on the edge of the couch, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, a picture of conflicted resolve. "Why do we have to wait until tonight? Can't we just go after him now?" he asked, the desperation ringing clear in his voice. "Because in this game timing is everything," I replied, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "We need to be patient and remain smart. Act impulsively and we could lose everything." Lily chimed in, her expression earnest. "Can't we do anything to draw them out sooner? Find something of theirs to bait them with?" I understood her rationale. The feeling of powerlessness was suffocating, straddling that fine line between anxiety and desperate courage. "It's too risky," I countered gently, favoring the urgency of caution over recklessness. Our discussions ebbed and flowed, punctuated by the weight of silence in between. I felt the ache of the past weighing heavily on my heart, a deep-rooted tension that wove through each of our interactions. I needed to reassure Jamie, to let him know that I saw his intention, his courage, but how could I when my own fears loomed over me like a dark cloud? As the hours crawled by, I caught Rachel's gaze. Her determination was undaunted, and it reminded me of the woman I used to know, the one who fought daily against the demons of her past. "You still think about our plan?" I asked her, searching for clarity in the chaos. "Every moment," she replied, her voice a whisper that seemed to resonate with my own heartbeats. "But my focus isn't just on the gala. It's on making sure that this time Hawthorne doesn't get to pull the strings." Her words struck a chord within me. I nodded, realizing that we shared this burden, this resolve to protect what mattered most. I couldn't let past betrayals color my future choices. Jamie deserved to see the future through hopeful eyes, unfettered by the burdens I once shouldered. Much later, The daylight began to fade, the shadows lengthening as we all readied ourselves. I caught sight of Jamie dressing in a dark suite, a stark contrast to the innocence that had once gleamed in his eyes. Now that same innocence was cloaked in layers of maturity far beyond his years. "Do I really have to stay hidden?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly as he adjusted the collar of his shirt. "I want to help. I can be useful." I stepped closer, kneeling slightly to catch his gaze and crush the doubt that twinkled in his eyes. In that moment I saw the boy he still was, full of potential and untarnished dreams. "You are already helping, Jamie. But staying out of sight is key to keeping you safe, and we can't let Hawthorne think he has you in his sights." Understanding settled in his expression, a blend of disappointment and determination. He folded his arms again, but I spotted a glint of resolve beneath the surface. As the night deepened, we gathered our things, the tension thickening in the air as we left the safety of our home behind. Each step toward the gala was fraught with unspoken fears and unyielding hope. Arriving at the venue, I felt swallowed by the grandeur. The once glimmering halls now felt alien in the face of impending confrontation. Guests glided past us in tuxedos and sparkling gowns, oblivious to the storm brewing in the shadows. "You have your phones?" I reminded everyone quietly. Rachel nodded, and despite my unease, I felt buoyed by her presence. The strength emanating from her lent a flicker of courage amidst the uncertainty. "Stick close," I instructed softly as we moved into the thrumming heart of the event. The energy electric yet daunting. Jamie's hand slipped into mine, a reassuring anchor as we mingled among the crowd. And then I saw him, Hawthorne, a regal figure at the center of a group of admirers, effortlessly commanding attention as he regaled them with tales spun from his carefully crafted image. My heart dropped. "Stay behind me," I warned, sensing the instinctive urge to protect my son surging within. But Jamie's rebellious spirit ignited. What if I confront him? What if he doesn't see me as a child anymore? He whispered urgently, a spark ignited. That youthful determination collided with fear, lifting my heart even as it plunged. "You can't do this alone," I cut in. But before I could finish, Jamie pulled away, weaving through the crowd toward the very figure I aimed to shield him from. "Jamie!" I called, but the din of laughter swallowed my voice, lost to the festive chaos. I felt Rachel's hand on my shoulder, her voice laced with something alarming. "We have to let him make his own choice, but we can't lose sight of the goal." It felt like an eternity as I fought to maintain my composure, my heart racing as I tried to catch Jamie in my line of vision. He approached Hawthorne, who glanced down, a fleeting expression of disdain crossing his face before he shrugged it off, and suddenly, I saw Jamie standing tall, his posture, once timid, infused with defiance. The crowd around them thinned, their conversations fading into the background, and in that suspended moment, it felt as if the chaos of our lives fell silent to bear witness to this unexpected summit. But then something shifted. The smile on Hawthorne's face twisted, and the look in his eyes welled with something dark and predatory. Well, Hawthorne drawled, his voice carrying an edge that silenced the surrounding laughter. "If it isn't the son of the man I've always wanted to train. You certainly think too highly of yourself." My stomach twisted, fear snaring me as I recognized the blatant dismissal. Jamie's expression hardened, but I could feel a tide of desperation clawing at my throat. Just then, the sounds of laughter turned into hushed whispers as the crowd slowly began to realize something was amiss. My heart raced as I started toward them, but a firm hand gripped my arm, holding me back. "Wait," Rachel whispered urgently. "Let it unfold. He needs this." My mind was a storm of conflicting emotions: fear, anger, helplessness, and before I could respond, Jamie's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "You don't scare me, Hawthorne. I'm not afraid of you anymore." That one declaration hung in the air, echoing a challenge I never expected him to speak. And as the spectators leaned closer, caught in the moment's tension, I held my breath, poised on the precipice of chaos, knowing irrevocably that our carefully balanced lives hung in the balance. Tomorrow had transformed from a challenge to a reckoning, and as the crowd swelled around the two, I could almost hear the promises I had made to myself shattering with every heartbeat. The stakes had never been so high. The air crackled with tension, each second stretching like a thin thread threatening to snap. I strained to grasp the unfolding scene between Jamie and Hawthorne, my heart pounding in my ears. The world around us faded, consumed by the gravity of the moment. "Stop it!" I finally managed to cry out, the desperation clawing at my throat as I tried to break through the thickening haze of anxiety that enveloped us. I wasn't just fighting to protect Jamie. I was fighting to preserve the fragile hope that had kept us moving forward amidst the shadows of our past. But before I could reach him, Hawthorne's demeanor shifted. His lips curved into a thin, mocking smile, eyes glinting with a sinister light. "You think speaking bravely will change anything? You're just a child playing at being a man. Your mother has always been good at embellishing stories," he sneered. The words dripping with disdain, and a wave of defiance surged through me. But even as I prepared to intercede, Jamie stood his ground. "I'm not a child, you're the one afraid of losing power. You can't hide behind your ruthless games anymore. Not from me." Those words hung in the air, reverberating against the opulent walls of the gala, catching the attention of guests who began to murmur among themselves. A few stepped closer as curiosity thickened the crowd, drawn to this unexpected confrontation that felt like a storm brewing. Hawthorne's expression faltered for a moment, the mask of confidence slipping. "Did you think your mother would train you to come here and confront me? She's weak just like you," he spat, his voice sharp. The accusation rippled through the group, and I saw Rachel tense at my side, her entire being vibrating with unfiltered anger. "Don't let him bait you, Jamie," she muttered, her worry etched deep into her features. But Jamie was on fire, his anger mingling with the courage I had hoped to instill within him. "You're wrong. She's stronger than you'll ever be." His voice echoed like a clarion call, snapping the last remnants of uncertainty within me. In that moment, it was as if Jamie was channeling every ounce of pain and trauma we had endured together, transforming our shared struggles into a power that surged through him. I could see it in his eyes, a flicker of something relentless kindling between us, the hope that we could rise above the rubble of our past, that we could turn the tables on the narrative Hawthorne had spun. Yet, in the shifting dynamics of the crowd, I also sensed a wave of dissent. Hawthorne's supporters, those who fed off his tyranny, were beginning to stir. The shift in their expressions, growing disdain and ridicule, was palpable. I could feel a tempest brewing not only within my son but outside, in the mannerisms of the guests surrounding us. "I see you now," Hawthorne continued, his voice dripping with menace that laced the atmosphere with dread. "Your mother taught you well, but you're still just a boy. And boys don't belong in a man's realm." Jamie's face tightened, his youthful bravado wavering under the weight of such a declaration. My heart raced as I struggled against the instinct to rush forward, to protect him from the venomous words spilling from this monster's mouth. Then everything changed in a single heartbeat. From the edges of the gallery, there came an unexpected voice, a woman's voice, tinged with sincerity that silenced the murmurings. "How dare you demean a child, and mine at that?" I turned, surprised to see a familiar figure emerge from the periphery of the crowd. Sophia, an old friend who had once stood by my side, a warrior in her own right. Her sharp gaze fell upon Hawthorne, undeterred by the gathered throng. "You and your empire of fear have no place here. Jamie deserves to speak his truth, to stand as his own man." Hawthorne's lips pressed into a thin line, surprised by the sudden rebellion taking root around him. Whispers swept through the crowd as Sophia's words began to crumple his facade, emboldening others to step forward, rallying for Jamie in a way I hadn't anticipated. "Enough of this," Hawthorne growled, but the challenge in Jamie's eyes, coupled with the wildfire of support ignited by Sophia, burned back against him. I could see the tide beginning to turn, yet the stakes were as high as ever. With the chaos of the crowd shifting around us, a heavy silence fell after Sophia's proclamation. The air seemed thick with anticipation, the energy palpable as Jamie faced off against Hawthorne, steady and fierce. But just as the balance appeared to teeter in our direction, a cold hand gripped my arm. Someone had stepped up beside me, a sinister smile creeping like frost into my soul. "Interesting how that child has grown so bold." A low voice rumbled, dark and familiar. If only he knew what waits beyond the facade. I turned, my stomach plummeting as I realized who stood beside me. It was Marcus, Hawthorne's right hand, the very man whose loyalty had only ever been to cruelty. "You could have walked away safely, wouldn't that have been better?" he snarled, a thrill of malice dancing in his eyes. "I won't let you intimidate my family anymore," I hissed, my heart pounding as everything spiraled around me. Marcus leaned closer, the scent of danger palpable between us. "Oh, but you're already too far gone, dear. Tonight is not merely about the past, it's about what truly lies ahead. The choices that will shatter your fragile fortress forever. A surge of foreboding wrapped around my chest. My gaze flickered back to Jamie, who was still standing tall in defiance against Hawthorne and the gathering crowd, emboldened by Sophia's support. Yet, with the shadows lurking close behind him, looming threats emerging that I had failed to foresee, I understood that our evening of hope was fraught with imminent peril. Tonight was no longer just about confronting the monster that had haunted us. It was about defiance against an entire system that sought to silence us. As the pieces began to fall into place, I realized with painful clarity that the fight was far from over. And deep in my gut, an instinct whispered that the real battle awaited in the shadows, threats hidden just beyond the borders of the gala. And with every breath, the weight of what we had to lose grew heavier. The night was just beginning, and the storm ahead may very well change everything we knew forever. The atmosphere buzzed with an unexpected current, a mix of tension and hope forged by Jamie's unyielding spirit and Sophia's timely intervention. But as I glanced at Marcus, whose mocking gaze seemed to dig into my very soul, I became acutely aware of the undercurrents swirling in the grand ballroom. My heart raced, tethered to a fear I could not fully articulate. "Let's see who truly emerges victorious tonight," he said. His voice honeyed but laced with a venom too familiar to ignore. Bravery can be mistaken for recklessness, especially when the stakes have never been higher. His words slithered into my thoughts, unearthing memories of when I had once been brave, challenging the darkness, emboldened by the love I felt for my son. However, the cost had always loomed large, an unsettling specter tarnishing every bold step I had taken. The knowledge of sacrifice hung heavy in the air as Jamie squarely faced Hawthorne, his back straightened under the weight of defiance. I feared the haughtiness might provoke something explosive. Would Hawthorne retaliate against Jamie's burgeoning audacity? The tension between them was a palpable force, and I could see that others in the crowd felt it too, many of them deciding where to cast their loyalties. But amidst the storm swirling around us, I noticed Rachel standing close, her eyes shimmering with determination. The strength evident in her stance surprised me. She had always been the friend who clung to quiet resilience, yet tonight she exuded a raw energy, an unspoken promise of support. I took a deep breath, drawing some reassurance from her presence, yet the nagging awareness of Marcus still taunted me, lurking like a shadow waiting to engulf us. "Jamie," I called softly, weaving my way through the throngs of people, desperate to convey my support. "Remember, it's not just about standing your ground. It's about knowing when to take a step back." Hawthorne's eyes fell on me, a cold smile spreading across his lips. "Ah, the protective mother has found her voice. How delightful," he drawled. The crowd shifted as the whispers grew louder, creating an invisible barrier against my son's passionate stand. But Jamie didn't waver. "I'm not afraid of you," he shouted, the fire within him evident. His voice reverberated throughout the room, sparking a wave of murmurs from those beginning to identify with his courage. Marcus leaned in closer, his breath sending ripples of revulsion through me. "Oh, but you should be. Know that the truth can be a weapon sharper than any dagger. Your son is simply a pawn in a much larger game." "Stop it!" I cried out, breaking away from Marcus's grasp and charging towards my son. Yet, at that moment my will faltered and I stumbled, revealing more than just my distress. The weight of my vulnerability spilled over, an emotion raw and unfiltered. "You're all so enamored with your little rebellion," Marcus continued, his voice smooth and taunting. "But the consequences will be devastating." So naive. But as I locked eyes with Jamie, I forwent the temptation to shield him further. Instead, I saw the flicker of understanding ignite within him needed to navigate this storm through his own strength. Even if it meant facing consequences we couldn't predict right now. And that same instant, the tension exploded. A group of Hawthorne's supporters had edged forward, emboldened by his machinations, a calculated move to encircle us, to intimidate. "What do you know of power, boy?" one of them yelled, an echo of Hawthorne's disdain. "You're just a child." "Enough." Sophia's voice rang out again, clear and resolute, cutting through the noise. She stepped into the fray, arms outstretched as if to protect Jamie, and my heart surged with gratitude. Others, inspired by her confidence, began to join her, positioning themselves alongside Jamie. Suddenly the atmosphere thickened. An observer, a stranger, stepped forward from the crowd, the sight catching my breath. It was my former mentor, Oliver, his gaze fierce and determined, piercing the encircling darkness. "You dare challenge the next generation, Hawthorne? You should know. The tides turn eventually," he declared, an unexpected ally in our fight. In that moment I felt a shift, sparking a glimmer of hope amid the chaos. Courage swelled in the hearts of many, converging around Jamie through this unanticipated show of solidarity against the tyranny that had stifled our lives for too long. But just as that hope anchored itself, I felt the air shift. The crowd began to chatter, uncertainty carving closer lines. And then Hawthorne laughed, a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. "If you think your words can shield you, child, then you're sorely mistaken. You've only just begun to understand what it means to challenge a king with those words." An unsettling realization washed over me. The culmination of Jamie's rebellion would demand a price, one I could scarcely bear to consider. That heavy dread settled in my stomach like a stone, and as Hawthorne's face twisted with glee, I knew we were standing on the precipice of something dangerous, something personal and irrevocable. As the crowd began to whisper, fear creeping back into their voices, I whispered a silent prayer for Jamie, for us all, that we remained resilient, no matter the cost. But even as my heart raced and the drama around us crescendoed into chaos, a sudden scream erupted. "Watch out!" someone yelled, and I turned to see a handful of Hawthorne's men breaking away from the circle, their eyes wild with purpose. In that split second, with my heart in my throat and a jolt of adrenaline, I divined that the offshoot of this rebellion may come crashing down much sooner than we ever expected. The real battle was inevitable, and none of us were prepared for the lengths to which Hawthorne was willing to go. As the echoes of fear clashed against the budding hope, the truth that buried itself deep in my soul loomed larger than ever. We were not just fighting for ourselves but for the very future that hung in the balance, one that threatened to unravel at any moment. And beneath that chaos, the shadows darkened with the foreboding whispers of secrets, yet to be revealed, secrets that could shatter everything we thought we knew. In the chaos of the gala, my heart raced, and time itself twisted into a surreal dance of anticipation. The moment of confrontation morphed into something unimaginable, and as tears threatened to spill, I steeled myself for the storm ahead. The scream lingered in my ears as I turned to where Hawthorne's men broke from the encroaching crowd. A sinister move hailed with the promise of brutality. "Stay together," I shouted, my voice rough yet determined, that primal urge to protect pushing me toward Jamie. But the shadows around us seemed to thicken, closing in like a tightening noose. Jamie remained resolute, fueled by an inner light that ignited both fear and pride in me. And as I looked around, I saw countless others rallying beside him, a chorus of defiance against the chaos. Sophia stepped forward, fierce and unyielding, forging a path for us. "We stand united. We will not cower." Her words echoed like a rallying cry, spurring courage deep within my chest. I had thought we were fragile, but in this moment, resoluteness surged among us like a river breaking free from its constraints. From my peripheral vision, I sensed Marcus leaning in again, his voice low and taunting. "It's cute watching you think you can change the course of destiny." He chuckled darkly, but his bravado couldn't mask the underlying tremor of unease. Hawthorne's supporters looked disquieted. They weren't so certain anymore. "Jamie," I shouted, drawing my son's attention to the brewing storm, a growing tension woven through the crowd as Hawthorne's grip threatened to crush us once and for all. Just then, a sudden movement caught my eye. A figure emerged from the shadows where chaos threatened to erupt, a woman clad in sleek black, with eyes that burned like embers. In an instant, time slowed as she stepped into the fray, unfurling an aura of power that commanded the room. Lydia, the one-time unknown ally turned fierce protector, had come. I hadn't even realized I'd silently beckoned her presence. Yet here she stood, a force replete with intention. "Hawthorne, this ends tonight," she declared, her voice slicing through the tension with fierce confidence. "You can imprison hearts and minds, but an ember ignited by truth spreads too far for you to extinguish. These people deserve justice. Jamie deserves justice." The shift in the crowd was palpable. Murmurs of agreement rippled outwards, a tide rising against the looming threat. As the realization settled, I exchanged a glance with Rachel, her eyes brimming with a mixture of hope and fear, but also clarity. We weren't just here to face our past. We were here to forge a future. "Back off," one of Hawthorne's men growled, shifting closer. But that moment of bravado faltered as more voices joined ours, echoing in a chorus of defiance. The crowd, once hesitant, began to push back against their fears, realizing, perhaps for the first time, that standing together was their strongest shield against the storm. Jamie stood at the helm, emboldened by newfound resilience, refusing to hide behind shadows any longer. "You're wrong, Hawthorne," he called, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. "You think power reigns supreme? You think it can crush us? You were wrong to underestimate the strength that comes from standing tall together." Just as those words left his lips, something shifted irreversibly. The parenting bonds I had fought so hard to protect grew sharper, more tangible. I could feel the weight of collective conviction pushing back against the barricades of past pain across my life. Together we were transforming trauma into my son's righteous fury. And then it happened. A rush of adrenaline surged as chaos erupted again. One of Hawthorne's men lunged toward Jamie, but a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sophia swiftly intercepted, her hands clenching as she blocked the attacker's path, her fierce spirit igniting a fire among those behind her. "Not today," she cried out, and the surge of energy pushing against us only grew stronger. I pressed forward, fighting my way through the gathered crowd, an insatiable need to protect overtaking me. The heat of the moment forged an unbreakable bond within us, a unity fueled by defiance. In those swirling breaths of chaos, I felt a powerful tide of strength swelling within our ranks. As whispers took form, a chant began to rise from the mouths of all who had been stifled for too long, each voice layering over the other. "Justice. Freedom. Together." Hawthorne's expression soured, a mixture of disbelief and rage twisting his features as the realization dawned. The power he wielded was dissipating. The cracks he once held proudly were beginning to fracture. Everything we had faced was leading toward this moment. All that we endured had driven us here, to this moment of reckoning. "Enough of this." He spat, his voice laden with venom, but the crowd refused to fold. They pressed closer, encircling him now, forming a barrier of solidarity. "You think you can silence a generation?" Jamie stepped up next to Sophia, his voice imbued with a strength I had never seen before. "Silence us? No, we speak loudly now. We won't let the facade of power drown out our call for justice. We will hold you accountable for every life you've toyed with, for every memory you've destroyed." And then came the unexpected moment. A ripple of uncertainty flashed across Hawthorne's face. I caught sight of a crack in his armor. It was now or never. I followed Jamie's lead. "You've built a world on fear," I called out, my voice vibrating with conviction. "But it is us, this family and this community, that will build a world of hope." I saw a moment of realization etched in his features. A flicker of vulnerability amidst the tempest of power. One that could shred the empire he believed was unshakable. But then came the flickering darkness, a desperate movement from Marcus as he plowed through the crowd, wielding a sense of chaos that threatened to separate us. "You cannot defeat fate. You cannot outrun what lies ahead," he screamed, his voice weaving into a tapestry of desperation to pull us down, the harbinger of dread. I drew closer to Jamie as fear surged in my throat. "Stay back, let me handle this," I urged, the instinct to protect him flaring up once again as I could see the chaos around him tighten like a noose. But the sound of the chanting escalated, people closer to us rallying together, their bravery igniting something powerful and indomitable. A sudden push erupted from the front lines of our collective force, those who had been suffocated by the shadows. A surge of unity forged through shared pain unfurled before us. It exploded with unyielding rage and purpose, lifting the tidal wave of belief even further. "If not justice, what else is left?" Jamie shouted, unwavering amidst the storm. "If we give in now, what does that say of our fight? We deserve to summon courage to awaken through these flames. Fight for family, for belief. Even the past cannot consume us." And in that moment, as the conflict surged within us, reality morphed. Hawthorne's empire was teetering on the brink of collapse, and the support around us surged like a mighty wave. I turned to Rachel, seeing the fierce conviction in her eyes that mirrored my own. That was the gift bestowed upon us, the promise that unity could withstand even the darkest storms. Amidst the swirling chaos, I reached for Jamie's hand, intertwining our fingers, feeling the warmth of our bond wrap around us like a protective shield. "No matter what happens, Jamie, I'll always be proud of you," I whispered, the weight of my heart settling into a resonating truth. Then I turned back to face the menacing force before us. "This ends now. We will no longer withhold our voices. We will no longer bow to your malice." And as we stood together, that unlikely group igniting flames of courage against the approaching storm. I felt every heartbeat resonate with that pivotal moment as they surged forth, entwining our souls in an indelible bond. The balance had shifted, hope sparked anew, invigorating an unwavering belief that could not be quenched. And in that poignant heartbeat, a world of possibilities unfolded before us. Hawthorne, you thought you could bury us in darkness, but today we emerge. I shouted, my voice fortified with fierce determination. Everything I had fought for, the sacrifices made, and the weight of the past all converged on this moment. And as the tide turned, I felt our hearts unite through time and space, weaving the threads of our past into an unbreakable tapestry of love, resilience, and unity, and in an instant, the real storm broke, shattering the shadow of Hawthorne's reign forever. With our hearts ignited in the face of fear, we rose up as one, a force intertwined, a family forged anew, stronger, braver, unafraid to face what lay ahead. Today is the day we reclaim our light. Jamie yelled in triumph, a banner of hope flailing above our heads, proving that against even the fiercest darkness, we would blaze our own trail together. And as the echo of our voices rumbled through the night, I felt a profound shift in the air, knowing we had tapped into something truly powerful, a force born not from rage, but from a depth of love and resolve that would breeze through the future. For in unity, we had discovered the true meaning of strength, and nothing could ever dim the brightness of that flame.